Broncos country, football is back. Let's go over the game plan to get a win over the Las Vegas Raiders. So tomorrow officially marks the beginning of a new era of Denver Broncos football, as it is the opening game for Sean Payton as Denver Broncos head coach. And it couldn't come against a better opponent than our former head coach Josh McDaniels and the Las Vegas Raiders, who themselves are very much entering a new era. It'll be the first year since 2013 that Derek Carr will not be under center. Jimmy Garoppolo is the new quarterback for the Las Vegas Raiders. Personally, Jimmy Garoppolo is a significant downgrade from Derek Carr, so that is going to significantly affect the game plan in this one. So without further ado, guys, let's go over some keys to victory for the Denver Broncos over the Las Vegas Raiders. So, of course, we all know that there are two players on the Las Vegas Raiders roster that have given the Denver Broncos trouble over the past several years. The Broncos have yet to beat the Raiders since 2019, since they were still known as the Oakland Raiders, and the main reason for that is the elite play from Josh Jacobs and Max Crosby whenever they play against the Denver Broncos. In earlier videos throughout the week, we've gone over just how much damage those two players have done against the Denver Broncos. So it's going to be key to slow down those two guys. We're going to start off with how they can potentially contain Max Crosby. And it's not just Max Crosby, it's the entire Raiders pass rush. The Broncos do get a significant advantage as Chandler Jones is going to be out for this game due to personal reasons. So that's going to make life easier when it comes to containing Max Crosby, because the Denver Broncos can invest more resources into doing so, such as chipping with tight ends such as Chris Manhertz and Adam Troutman. Those guys were brought in here to block, and they are going to really have to step up in this game going against Max Crosby. On the other side of Crosby is going to be a rookie in Tyree Wilson, and I feel like Tyree Wilson's somebody that we can trust one of our tackles, Garrett Bowles or Mike McGlinchey, to go one-on-one against them, so that way we can invest all of our other protection attention to the other side with Max Crosby. The Raiders' interior defensive line, I gotta be honest, isn't too daunting, so I'm confident in our interior defensive line with Ben Powers, Lloyd Cushenberry, and Quinn Miners to be able to lock down the Raiders' interior D-line. But as long as we can invest some more attention into picking up Max Crosby, hell, I wouldn't be opposed to even triple teaming him with a tackle, a tight end, and a running back. If that's what we have to do in order to beat Max Crosby, then so be it. Because the Denver Broncos, I'd much rather risk getting beat up the middle with the Raiders defensive line than risk getting beat off the edge with Max Crosby and Tyree Wilson. Another thing that the Broncos have to do in order to slow down the Raiders' pass rush is establish the run. That's going to make things a lot easier for the Broncos' offensive line. It's going to make things a lot easier for Russell Wilson. The Broncos will be able to establish the play-action game where Russell Wilson thrives. So that's why the Broncos really need to focus on being a run-heavy team in this one. We're going to see a lot of 12, 13 personnel, meaning 2 or 3 tight ends in the formation. We're going to be a ground and pound football team. And at the end of the day, for the Broncos to get a win, they're going to have to win in the trenches, and that starts with being able to establish the run on offense and slow down the rushing attack on defense. Now, in order to do that, our front seven is going to have to significantly step up against Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs has historically burned the Denver Broncos in yards after contact, so what that tells me is that he's really, really hard to bring down, and we see that whenever you watch film of Josh Jacobs going against the Broncos. The Broncos need to do better keeping Josh Jacobs in front of them and not let him break through multiple tackles and burst free for a big run. That'll cause big issues for this team if Josh Jacobs can get going, because we all know that once Josh Jacobs gets going, the Raiders' play-action game gets going. And Jimmy Garoppolo is one of the best play-action quarterbacks in the league dating back to his time in San Francisco. So if the Raiders' play-action game gets going, that will open the door for the Raiders' offense to exploit this Denver defense. So all of it starts with being able to contain Josh Jacobs and, again, keep him in front of you. So we're going to need Josie Jewell, Alex Singleton, and probably even Drew Sanders to step up in this one. I feel like we may see Drew Sanders in an elevated role because of his abilities as a run stuffer. And then also up front, we're going to need DJ Jones to step up, Mike Purcell to step up, Zach Allen to step up, and our edge rushers as well. So this is going to be a big task for this Denver Broncos defensive line, stopping Josh Jacobs. And if we can stop Josh Jacobs and stop the Raiders' play action game, and if we can force the Raiders to move away from the run game and move away from the play action game and force them to turn into a straight drop back team with Jimmy Garoppolo, that's where I feel like the Broncos will have a massive advantage. Jimmy Garoppolo crumbles whenever you bring pressure on him, especially up the middle. So that's again where we're going to need DJ Jones and Zach Allen and Mike Purcell to all step up, bringing that interior pressure while the edge rushers sort of collapse everything around and keep him contained. And that way, Jimmy Garoppolo, once he's in that situation, he's got nowhere to go, and he gets forced into some really dumb decisions. We think back to the game against the 49ers last year when Jimmy Garoppolo stepped out of the back of the end zone due to interior pressure spooking him, and he's lucky he stepped out of the back of the end zone on that play because otherwise he would have thrown a pick six to Bradley Chubb. So Jimmy Garoppolo, if you can get pressure on him, especially up the middle, he crumbles like a house of cards. So I'm really hoping that we can establish that pressure, and if we do, that's a huge, huge, huge advantage for the Denver Broncos. The next key to victory here is how will the Denver Broncos go about covering Davante Adams, and that one is a little bit of a question mark to me. Will we see Pat Surtain travel with Davante Adams everywhere he goes, or will we see Pat Surtain mostly stick to covering one side of the field, and will we see some sort of bracket coverage situation on Davante Adams whenever he lines up on the opposite side of Pat Surtain, possibly with Justin Simmons and Damari Mathis? That's something I feel like we could get away with in this game and not have to have Pat Surtain travel with Davante Adams, because Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't have the same chemistry with Davante Adams that Derek Carr does. So I feel like some of the advanced route running stuff and some of the advanced throws that Jimmy Garoppolo or that Derek Carr and Davante Adams were able to execute last year, those are going to be off the table, at least in the early part of the season, between Jimmy Garoppolo and Davante Adams. And on top of that, Jimmy Garoppolo's arm talent is not at the same level as Derek Carr's is. So I feel like we could get away with potentially bracketing Davante Adams on one side and then having PS2 take away Jacoby Myers on the other side. And that's not to say that PS2 isn't going to cover Davante Adams a lot. He will be the primary guy covering Davante Adams, but I don't think it's going to be on every single snap like a lot of people think it will be. But that's just how I envision it. We could be dead wrong here, and we could very well see Davante Adams and PS2 travel together the entire game. But I'm curious to see how the Broncos will approach that. Obviously, last year in our final matchup against the Raiders, Davante Adams owned PS2, especially on that final play, the walk-off touchdown play. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the Denver Broncos go about attacking Davante Adams, especially now that he doesn't have his quarterback with him that he's got all that chemistry with in Derek Carr. The next thing we've got to talk about, of course, is Russell Wilson. And I feel like the key to Russell Wilson playing a good game in this one is for the Denver Broncos to establish some quick, easy completions for him, some quick rollouts, some quick hitch routes, some quick curl routes, maybe a Texas route, just some quick, easy throws, get the ball out of his hands at a lightning fast speed, and basically don't give Russell Wilson any time to second guess himself. Not to say that he's been doing that in training camp in the preseason. He's actually done a pretty good job of not doing that, but the best way for this offense to be clean and efficient is get the ball out of Russell Wilson's hands, and that's also getting the ball into the hands of the running backs in the passing game. We'll talk about that later, how we're going to see the split between our three running backs, Samaje Perine, Javonte Williams, and Jaleel McLaughlin. Spoiler alert, I feel like we're going to see a lot more of Jaleel McLaughlin than people think, but either way, man, getting that ball out of Russell Wilson's hands quickly is going to be the key to this, because if Russell Wilson doesn't get into a rhythm early, I feel like it's going to be a lot harder to come back from behind, and maybe those demons will start getting into Russell Wilson's head again. So I want Sean Payton to be able to establish Russell Wilson's confidence in this one. That's huge, and that's going to set the tone for the entire season of Russell Wilson's play, I feel like. So once he lost that confidence in that first game in Seattle, he was never able to really gain it back. And Russell had the offense on schedule on that game. It was those two fumbles really killed things, and then obviously Nathaniel Hackett's blunder trying the 64-yard field goal and not putting the ball in Russell Wilson's hands in a key situation like that. That, I feel like, mentally screwed with Russell Wilson quite a bit, and he was never able to gain that confidence that, hey, I'm that dude. I'm that dude who's won a Super Bowl. I'm that dude who's been one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL for over a decade. I am that dude who's been to the Pro Bowl 9 times. Russell Wilson needs to get back to that level of confidence, and I'm really hoping Sean Payton will be able to help him find it. I'm getting all fired up in this one, but man, we need to see a confident Russell Wilson out there slinging the rock, and that is what Sean Payton is going to bring. And the key to that is get the ball out of his hands quickly, early, and often. Get that play action game going, and get the run game going to take some of the pressure off Russ. If we can do that, then this Denver Broncos offense is going to be in good shape. But then the next question becomes, who is Russell Wilson going to throw the ball to? It was announced earlier today that the Denver Broncos have called up Philip Dorsett and Little Jordan Humphrey from the practice squad. That leads me to believe that Jerry Jeudy is probably not going to play in the season opener, despite him practicing in a limited capacity throughout the entire week. But I do feel like Jeudy is probably in a lot better position to play next week. In this game, we're going to need Courtland Sutton to step up, obviously. We're going to see a lot of Marvin Mims. We're going to see a lot of Brandon Johnson. And then we're going to see Philip Dorsett as well. And it's going to be interesting to see how they integrate Little Jordan Humphrey in. I feel like he's probably going to fill that Jerry Jeudy role. So we may see quite a bit more Little Jordan Humphrey than a lot of people think. The final thing I want to talk about is how the Denver Broncos are going to split the workload between Javonte Williams, Samaje Perine, and Jaleel McLaughlin. I feel like it's probably going to be 40% Javonte Williams, 35% Samaje Perine, and then 25% Jaleel McLaughlin. Yes, Jaleel McLaughlin is going to see a pretty big workload in this one. He's going to get quite a few carries up the middle. He'll get a chance to get a couple of outside runs. He'll get a chance to get a couple of swing passes out of the backfield, maybe a Texas route, something like that. I'm betting Jaleel McLaughlin will probably have a touchdown in his debut. The Denver Broncos really like him as their scat back, and he's going to be utilized quite a bit, especially on third down and short situations as a pass catcher out of the backfield. Now, Samaje Perine, I feel like, is going to be utilized a little bit more on like third and medium situations, on more obvious passing downs, where the Raiders may bring a blitz, and Samaje Perine will be used as a pass protector out of the backfield. He'll catch a couple of passes out of the backfield, and when the Denver Broncos need like 4 or 5 yards on first and second down, that's when we could see Samaje Perine. But Javonte Williams, he's going to get the workload of the carries, and it's going to be so good to see him back out there for his first regular season game action. And you know he's going to smell blood in the water because it's the team that he got injured against, and debatably, it was a dirty tackle that he got injured on from Max Crosby. So I'm really excited to see Javonte Williams come back with one of his angry runs. I really hope we can see that in this game. It's just going to be so good to see Pookie back out there. There was a lot of concern that he wasn't even going to be ready to go for the season opener, and here he is out there ready to be RB1 for the Denver Broncos headed into this year. So that is just absolutely awesome. All right, score prediction. I feel like it's going to be a little bit more of a low-scoring game, a lot of running the football on both sides. I don't know how many explosive plays we're going to see out of the passing game on either side, so I have this one being a Denver victory 20-13 over the Raiders. I'm just curious to see how this Raiders offense gels with Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback, and I don't know how many big explosive plays they're going to have, despite having one of the best wide receivers in the game in Devontae Adams, because they took away one of their biggest explosive playmaking threats in Darren Waller. And Michael Mayer, their rookie tight end, I really do like, but he's not Darren Waller, man. So I have the Denver Broncos winning this game, but Just a few things could go wrong for this team, and things could very much switch the other way, and the Las Vegas Raiders could pick up the dub here. All right, Broncos country, how do you feel like this game is going to shake out for the Denver Broncos? Drop your final score predictions in the comment section below. I would love to hear your thoughts as always. Be sure to leave a like on this video as well as subscribe and ring the bell so these videos appear in your notification feed. And stay tuned here on Denver Broncos Syndicate. We'll be live streaming from the stadium both pregame and postgame, so be sure to stay tuned for that. And until next time, guys, this has been another episode of Denver Broncos Syndicate. I am your host, Gage Madrid, saying peace out.